To start, 3CX has a very simple and a much more affordable licensing model.
If somebody is integrating 3CX, so they have a Teams environment and they want to integrate 3CX into an existing Teams environment, when does that make sense then?
It makes a lot of sense to now integrate Microsoft Teams with 3CX. So you can cater to the plethora of different use cases, applications.
3CX as a solution, it certainly showcases itself to be a very cost-effective communication solution. So let me ask my next question, which is, when a business why would a business deploy 3CX instead of Teams, right? Because that's certainly, there's two business models I've seen. That's deploying it instead of Teams, and then the other business model is obviously deploying, in a Teams environment. But let's start with the first one: is why would they deploy 3CX instead of Teams?
Okay,
from your perspective.
So to start, 3CX has a very simple and a much more affordable licensing model. Okay, so we're moving away from, and 3CX has always had this licensing model, so this is nothing new. So, but moving away from what people are accustomed to, paying per user per month, which is generally most new service or SaaS models are based on per user per month pricing.
Sure.
Okay, so if you're an organization, you've got 200, 300 people on your staff, you've got to have a license for each and every one of them, right?
Okay.
If you're going to use a Teams or any other UCaaS type of a service for that matter, right?
Right.
3CX offers a capacity-based model, right? So they shift the economies of scale that the service provider typically, that translate into pure margin for the service provider. They're shifting it into towards the business, right? So if you've got 200-300 users, and everybody knows, all of my 300 employees are not going to be on the phone at the same time.
Sure.
Okay, so it's going to be maybe a tenth of them that are going to be on the phone at any given time, or maybe a fifth of them, right? So why do I need to have a capacity to be able to handle 300 simultaneous calls? I don't, right? I only need to handle 30 or 50 or 60, and that's plenty for the amount of users I have in my organization, right? So from that perspective, the licensing model just being simple, affordable, cost effective, easy to scale. You don't have to think about it. That's the number one huge advantage.
Okay.
The benefits of having a really user-friendly chat and meeting solution.
Sure.
3CX actually already has that. And if you're deploying a system, you don't have to pay anything extra for that. That's part of what you're getting.
Right.
So you don't necessarily need another tool for that, and you don't have to pay licensing for another tool for that.
It's kind of built in.
It's built in.
Okay.
Then, if you look at the various type of use cases, we've been doing this for so many years. You come across retail where, you've got 50, 60, 80, 120 stores.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need to be on Microsoft Teams,
Hmm.
right? You've got, a rotating workforce, and you've got a phone in a retail location that's being shared by a whole bunch of people.
Meaning not being on Microsoft Teams, meaning the standard licensing models that Teams provide.
Exactly.
Because every user license is going to give you all these great nifty features, but does every user need all those features? Is that
exactly, right? So there's a lot of use cases where those features aren't really needed, right?
Sure.
So incurring licensing for all of those doesn't really make sense.
Got it.
So being able to deploy any type of device anywhere without having to worry about licensing is a big benefit, right? So so all these use cases like common area phones, guest phones, retail counters, front desks, warehouses, shop floors, there's all these different places where you need phones, you need extensions, but you don't need licensing.
Like paging systems as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Integrating, the excellent point, like integrating paging systems, intercom, PA systems, door access entry, all these different applications don't require Teams licensing. And then again, not all organizations are deploying Microsoft 365, right? So some don't have advanced level licensing. If you do have advanced level licensing, maybe it's a different story. But going and buying that just for telephony, and then the cost just escalates very quickly. So when you talk about scale, obviously 3CX allows you to scale, allows you to have a diverse and varied type of business application solutions, use cases for all different businesses and verticals.
Right. So let's talk about when it makes sense if somebody is integrating 3CX. So they have a Teams environment and they want to integrate 3CX into an existing Teams environment. When does that make sense then?
So yeah, if a business already has Microsoft Teams and they have advanced Microsoft licensing, then they don't necessarily need. Uh, Sorry, the question was about integrating Microsoft Teams with
Yeah, so
3CX.
Teams environment
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then adding 3CX into an existing Teams environment. It's not as a replacement strategy for Teams but something that says, I'm not switching Microsoft.
Right,
I want to
right,
stay
right,
with
right,
Microsoft.
right,
Where does 3CX play in that type of a role?
right, right, right. Okay, sorry. Um, so if you've got an organization, we come across this very frequently actually, where you've got a somebody who's in manufacturing or retail or healthcare or hospitality, where you've got, let's say, a management team. Right. Again,
Yeah.
my example of, you've got 200-300 people on staff, and you've got maybe 20-30 people that are part of the management team that are using Microsoft Teams and meeting and chat and collaborating and everything regularly on Microsoft Teams, and they want to have that. They want to have that Office 365 integration. They
Sure.
need that. But then you've got the other, let's say, 80 to 90% of the organization that doesn't really use it.
Sure.
It makes a lot of sense to now integrate Microsoft Teams with 3CX, so you can cater to the plethora of different use cases, applications, requirements, and integrations, and so on, that the organization might need, but at the same time cater to your executive team, and integrate their kind of beloved Teams application
Sure.
that they really want to keep.
Right.
And so you get it's kind of the best of both worlds approach, right?
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. So in other words, if we were to look at that 3CX experience, especially as it relates to critical voice services and applications, it sounds like you have the ability to your point, have the best of both worlds in a very cost effective way. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, for those users who are using Microsoft Teams, they can integrate their calling and their extensions with Microsoft Teams without having to purchase any additional licensing or any additional calling plans from Microsoft. For those users who don't have Teams licensing, they can still use their phone. They can still use operate however they need to in their business.
Right.
And the net result is that you meet the needs of the user group that really wants to keep Teams.
Yep.
But then the majority of users who don't necessarily need it or use it still have a chat and meeting solution as well.
Okay.
But you've satisfied the needs of the business at a much broader scale.
Yeah.
And you've done it much more cost effectively than you would if you were to just say, you know what, I'm just going to go Teams only approach
for everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this just to summarize everything we talked about. It's a lot of great information here. So if we were to look at 3CX as a solution, it certainly showcases itself to be very cost-effective communication solution, collaboration platform that you've talked about before for really any size business, and for a multitude of work environments, whether that be a hybrid work environment, for areas of collaboration or team collaboration, or even customer experience. I mean, you briefly touched upon that as well. And then in organizations where Microsoft Team is being used, like you said, by management teams, integrating with a 3CX solution provides the ability to have that versatility, right?
Mhm.
That versatility that says, okay, I may require these nice, fancy, Teams applications for certain types of user, but not every user in my organization fits the same way, and therefore every cost model should not be fitting the same way as well. And so that versatility that you talked about before is really building that. So I think at the end of the day, depending on whether it's a full 3CX solution or if it is a Teams integrated with a 3CX solution, you're getting an opportunity in that second scenario to really build the best of both worlds, which is an optimal user experience for Teams, and then the best of a voice PBX solution with flexibility of integrations, with flexibility of different verticals, in order to establish a really sound communication system that just extends beyond that one size fits all type of model.
Yeah, absolutely, Raza. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've actually designed and deployed these solutions for organizations exactly this way.
You're right.
Where we've had some unique business requirement, and there's always something, depending on the vertical, depending on what industry they're in, which kind of steers us in this direction that, yeah, I think maybe we need to do this best of both worlds approach, right?
Yeah.
And having the ability to integrate, because 3CX allows you to integrate off at the at the Microsoft 365 user level as well, right? So you can have Microsoft 365 single sign-on.
Right.
So you can create your users there, push them to 3CX, and then you can integrate Teams for those users who need it.
Right.
So, it's a really cost-effective way to maintain the Teams for those users who need it, and deploy a complete comprehensive solution for everybody else in the organization and meet all the needs of the business.
Right. Every user is unique. Every business requirement is unique. Flexibility associated with a team's environment who need it, or other solutions that support communication needs based on other user types. So that sounds like a pretty good solution.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for this very special podcast. I hope you learned something. I learned something today as well, and we hope to see you on the next one.